In the sweltering heat of a late June morning in 1914, the narrow streets of Sarajevo hummed with forced festivity, as Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie rode in an open-topped Graf-and-Stift automobile along the Apple Quay. Crowds pressed against police lines waving handkerchiefs and Austrian flags, their cheers mixing with the clatter of hooves on cobblestones and the distant toll of church bells marking St. Vitus Day. The air carried the sharp scent of summer dust, roasting chestnuts from vendor carts, and the faint metallic tang of tension no one yet named. Franz Ferdinand, stiff in his plumed helmet and green uniform, scanned the faces with imperial poise, while Sophie, radiant in white lace and a broad hat, offered gentle waves. A single wrong turn, a stalled engine, and two sharp cracks split the ordinary morning apart. Gavrilo Princip stepped from the crowd, pistol raised, and history pivoted on those bullets. Blood bloomed across Sophie's dress as she slumped over her husband, who gasped her name in a fading voice. The crowd screamed, horses reared, and in the stunned silence that followed, the first invisible fracture opened in the centuries-old order of Europe. Yet no one understood what was coming next. The collapse did not begin with chaos. It began quietly, with the echo of those shots fading into the Balkan hills, while telegraphs still hummed with routine dispatches. Europe in 1914 stood as a glittering web of empires, alliances, and ancient bloodlines stretched taut across the continent. The Austro-Hungarian Empire sprawled from the Alps to the Carpathians, ruled by the aging Emperor Franz Joseph from the gilded halls of Vienna's Hofburg Palace. To the east lay the Russian Colossus under Tsar Nicholas II, to the west the German Reich forged by Bismarck, and to the south the restless kingdoms of the Balkans still shaking off Ottoman shadows. Secret treaties bound nations in ironclad promises, the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, facing the Triple Entente of Britain, France, and Russia. Factories belched smoke into industrial skies, railways stitched capitals together, and colonial empires divided Africa and Asia like pieces on a board. Beneath the surface, however, ethnic grievances simmered in every province. Serbs dreamed of a greater Slavic state, Croats and Bosnians chafed under Habsburg rule, and pan-German voices whispered of destiny. The great powers had danced on the edge of war before, in Morocco, in the Balkans, always stepping back at the last moment. But the balance was fragile, a house of cards built on honor, fear, and the belief that no single spark could ignite the whole. Daily routines masked the gathering storm. Viennese cafes buzzed with newspapers and gossip. Serbian villages rang with Orthodox hymns, and diplomats exchanged polite telegrams, while military planners sharpened mobilization timetables in locked drawers. Before the shots in Sarajevo, daily life across the dual monarchy moved to the measured rhythm of empire. In Vienna, ladies in sweeping skirts strolled the Ringstrasse under gas lamps, while officers in spiked helmets clinked glasses in wine cellars and debated the latest Strauss waltz. Farmers in Bosnia rose at dawn to tend tobacco fields and plum orchards, their children carrying water in wooden yokes, past whitewashed mosques left by the Turks. In Budapest, merchants haggled in the great market hall over paprika and lace, unaware that their comfortable world rested on a fault line. Trains arrived on time, postmen delivered letters sealed with wax, and newspapers printed society pages alongside veiled reports of unrest in the South. Families gathered for Sunday dinners of schnitzel and strudel, speaking of the future as though it belonged to them alone. Children played in cobblestone squares beneath statues of long-dead emperors, their laughter echoing against marble facades that had stood for centuries. Yet in the provincial towns of Bosnia-Herzegovina, annexed only 6 years earlier, a different pulse beat. Young men met in smoky back rooms, reading forbidden pamphlets about Slavic unity, while mothers whispered prayers for sons who might one day answer a higher call. The empire felt eternal, its bureaucracy vast and slow, its army splendid on parade. No one sensed that the ordinary cadence of life was already counting down toward rupture. Early warning signs flickered like distant lightning across the Balkans. The assassination of King Alexander and Queen Draga of Serbia in 1903 had shown how quickly thrones could topple when nationalist fervor boiled over. Two Balkan wars in 1912 and 1913 redrew maps in blood, leaving Serbia swollen with territory and ambition, while Austria-Hungary watched its southern border with growing alarm. Secret societies such as the Black Hand operated in the shadows, funded by elements within the Serbian military, training young idealists in bomb-making and marksmanship. Intelligence reports crossed desks in Vienna, detailing plots and smuggled weapons, yet they were filed away as routine Balkan noise. Franz Ferdinand himself had received death threats. His visit to Sarajevo on the anniversary of the medieval Battle of Kosovo was interpreted by some as provocation, by others as courageous duty. Newspapers printed editorials praising imperial resolve, while underground leaflets called for revolution. Diplomats in London and Paris exchanged worried cables, yet the great powers reassured themselves that another crisis would pass like the others. The system creaked, alliances strained, but the music played on. By the time the signs became clear, it was already too late for the quiet adjustments that might have held the peace together. Rising tension gripped the corridors of power as the Archduke's motorcade prepared to depart Vienna. Franz Ferdinand, a man of reformist leanings who dreamed of federalizing the empire to give Slavs a voice, was viewed with suspicion by hardliners at court. Emperor Franz Joseph, frail and distant, offered little guidance beyond formal approval. In Belgrade, officers of the Black Hand recruited 7 young Bosnians, arming them with pistols and cyanide capsules, smuggling them across the border with the tacit knowledge of Serbian intelligence. The plotters practiced in forests, their hands trembling with both fear and conviction. As the royal train rolled south, warnings from local authorities were brushed aside. Security in Sarajevo was light, almost negligent. Crowds gathered under a blazing sun, and the procession moved forward with the fatalistic grace of a ritual long rehearsed. Inside the cars, conversation turned to the beauty of the countryside, the loyalty of the Bosnian regiments. Outside, the assassins waited in assigned positions, hearts pounding beneath threadbare coats. The first bomb exploded behind the Archduke's car, shattering windows and wounding bystanders, yet the procession continued after a brief pause. No one turned back. The invisible threads of miscalculation tightened further, pulling empires closer to the edge, while the afternoon sun climbed higher over the Miljacka River. Key decisions born of pride and misjudgment sealed the path toward catastrophe. Franz Ferdinand insisted on continuing the day's program despite the bombing attempt, determined to show strength and to comfort the wounded in hospital. Governor Oskar Potiorek assured him the danger had passed. The driver, unfamiliar with the route, turned the wrong way at the Latin Bridge, stalling the engine directly beside Gavrilo Princip, who had abandoned his original post in despair. 2 shots, fired at point-blank range, found their marks. In Vienna, the emperor received the news with stoic reserve, muttering that one must accept fate. In Berlin, Kaiser Wilhelm II, vacationing on his yacht, expressed outrage and promised full support to his ally. In St. Petersburg and Paris, foreign ministers began consulting mobilization plans. Serbia offered condolences but resisted demands for investigation, citing sovereignty. Every telegram, every cabinet meeting, every whispered assurance in chancelleries compounded the pressure. Honor demanded response, fear demanded caution. Alliance obligations left no room for retreat. The machinery of war, oiled by decades of planning, began to turn with inexorable logic. Mistakes were not single acts of folly, but the accumulated weight of assumptions that peace could always be preserved at the last minute. The moment the system began to fail arrived not with trumpets, but with the quiet click of a telegraph key in Vienna on July 23. Austria-Hungary delivered a harsh ultimatum to Serbia, demanding suppression of anti-Habsburg groups and Austrian officials inside Serbian courts, terms no sovereign nation could fully accept. Serbia's measured reply satisfied some but not the hawks in Vienna. On July 28, exactly 1 month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war and shelled Belgrade. Russia ordered partial mobilization to protect its Slavic brothers. Germany, bound by treaty, issued its own ultimatums and then declared war on Russia and France. Britain hesitated until German troops crossed into neutral Belgium, then joined the fray. Within days the continent was ablaze. Reservists kissed wives and children goodbye at railway stations. Trains heavy with artillery rolled eastward and westward, and the summer skies filled with the smoke of burning documents as embassies closed. The intricate web of alliances, designed to deter conflict, instead dragged every major power into the abyss. What began as punishment for one assassination became total war. The old order cracked open, and no amount of frantic diplomacy could mend it. Human consequences unfolded with merciless speed as the first months of fighting shattered an entire generation. Villages emptied of young men, cities filled with black mourning crepe. In the trenches of the Western Front and the muddy fields of Galicia, soldiers who had once cheered the Archduke's visit now crouched in waterlogged ditches, listening to the whine of shells and the screams of the wounded. Families received telegrams that began with regret to inform and ended with silence. In Vienna, bread lines formed as blockades strangled imports. In Petrograd, bread riots foreshadowed revolution. Children scavenged for coal in railway yards, while mothers stitched uniforms by candlelight. Fear became a constant companion, fear of the next casualty list, fear of spies, fear of the unknown future. Social norms that had governed polite society for centuries dissolved under the pressure of rationing, censorship, and grief. The assassination that had seemed a distant Balkan affair now reached into every parlor and factory floor, turning neighbors into enemies and dreams into nightmares. The breakdown was not merely military, it was the slow unraveling of trust in the very institutions that had promised stability. Long-term historical impact rippled outward for decades, reshaping the map and the soul of the modern world. Four empires, Austro-Hungarian, German, Russian, and Ottoman, collapsed under the weight of defeat, revolution, and exhaustion, their thrones toppled and their territories carved into new states born in bitterness. The Treaty of Versailles planted seeds of resentment that would bloom again in another war. New ideologies rose from the rubble: communism in Russia, fascism in Italy and Germany. Millions lay buried in unmarked graves or returned home maimed, carrying the invisible scars of gas and shell shock. Borders redrawn by diplomats in distant rooms ignored the ethnic hatreds that had fueled the original spark. The assassination in Sarajevo, once dismissed as a local tragedy, became the accepted starting gun for the bloodiest conflict humanity had yet known, a conflict that killed more than 16 million and wounded 20 million more. It ended the long 19th century and opened the short, violent 20th, proving that a single bullet could unmake the world order built over centuries of careful diplomacy and royal marriages. Yet even now, more than a century later, the streets of Sarajevo still carry the faint echo of that summer morning, where tourists pause beside plaques and schoolchildren learn names they will never forget. The world that emerged from the ruins was faster, harder, and infinitely more fragile, its new alliances and weapons promising peace while quietly preparing for the next rupture. We walk among the ghosts of empires that believe themselves eternal, reminded that history does not forgive the illusion of permanence. The collapse began with 2 shots on a dusty bridge, but its true end has never come. It lives in every treaty broken, every promise unkept, every generation that forgets how quickly the ordinary can become the irreversible. In the silence between past and future, the lesson remains hauntingly simple. No empire, no alliance, no century is safe from the moment when a single decision, born of pride or despair, tips the balance into darkness forever.